Welcome to the Rethink Leadership podcast with me, Jeremy Blain. I interview leaders, experts and business professionals from around the world who are bringing leadership principles and know-how into the digitally driven 21st century workplace, with focus firmly on the how-to rather than the what. Each episode is in aid of a charity chosen by my guests, and since 2020, we've made donations to over 80 global and local causes. My guest for today's Rethink Leadership podcast is the multi-talented Jevon Wooden. He's a certified coach, business consultant, speaker, podcast host, author and Army veteran, driven by a passion for leadership, for growth, for strategy and for aiding motivated leaders and businesses in reaching their objectives. His academic journey includes a master's degree in cybersecurity from Fordham University and an MBA from the Robert H. Smith School of Business at the University of Maryland. As a recipient of the Bronze Star for his courageous actions during a bombing attack at Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan, Jevon's leadership extends beyond conventional boundaries, and that's something we explore in this podcast. This episode is in aid of the Center for Youth, a charity supporting young people in the US in realising their full potential by creating opportunities, removing barriers and promoting social justice. We've made a donation as a thank you to Jevon for joining us. Jevon, thank you so much for joining me. It's great to see you again. It's my turn to say to you, please introduce yourself, your business, your podcast, of which I've been an honoured guest on, and your passions.
Absolutely, man. It is a pleasure and honor to be here, Jeremy. I've been waiting for this, excited since we recorded your episode. So a little bit about me is I am, the owner and CEO of Bright Mind Consulting Group, where we focus on tailored approaches to coaching and consulting, primarily in the leadership space. I always say we coach the person and consult the business. So we help businesses with branding, marketing, and just more effective productivity and team communication in essence. And then I'm also a speaker. I speak primarily on empathetic leadership and what that entails and how you use that to become better in every way, taking your business from functional to phenomenal.
Yeah, got it. And I know it's something you do particularly well. And before I get kind of into the detail of this podcast, you're a leader in business, you're a leader in your community. You do podcasts as well. And I'm interested to ask you, as a leader, what are the most important leadership lessons in these digital times that we learn and that you've picked up from your time as a business leader, but also from your podcast guests?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question, by the way. I would say the most important lessons that I've learned in these digital times, both from my personal experiences and podcast guests, revolve around adaptability, continuous learning, and empathetic communication. Change is rapid, it's often disruptive. So adaptability and openness to new ideas and technologies are crucial. And then when it comes to continuous learning, it's an essential aspect of staying relevant and innovative. And then empathetic communication. This is crucial because none of those other two are going to work if you do not have this. It's vital in leading diverse and geographically dispersed teams. You must ensure that everyone feels heard, feels valued. It's critical for effective collaboration, reducing employee turnover, and increasing the morale and productivity of your teams.
Yeah, nicely put. And I'm going to ask a further question about that. So if
Sure.
you were coaching me and I ask you the question, so what is empathetic leadership or empathetic communication? What do I need to do? What would you say?
Yeah, and the first thing I would say is to listen, right? Like I said in that, make sure they feel heard and they feel valued. A lot of people think empathy means being soft. That is not the case. Empathy actually means that you're more authentic. It means that you can put yourself in that person's shoes. So instead of just seeing it from your perspective and viewpoint, you actually listen to understand what their perspective and viewpoint. Why did they react the way they did? Why are they not performing at the level you expect them to perform, etc. And that allows you to really ask those questions, right? Being empathetic is about asking questions to understand, coming from a curious perspective. So I would say start there, just listen.
Yeah, great points there, Jevon. And I see you as a great leader for the digital era. You're very very much passionate about this human touch, let's call it, the empathy, connecting on a human level, but also leveraging the digital and helping us be more effective in doing that and more enabled in our jobs and so on. So again, thinking about your experiences, digital transformation, I guess, which is doesn't really exist. It's whole business transformation, isn't it, really? Because it's the
Yeah.
human as much as the digital. It remains the number one item on board and C-suite agendas today. From your experiences, why do you feel that so many are lagging in this respect? And what
Yeah.
are
First,
those who
uh,
are making progress actually doing differently?
yeah, absolutely. And first and foremost, thank you for the compliments. That means a lot coming from you, being a leader yourself. So I would say that regarding digital transformation, many organizations are lagging because they struggle with legacy systems, right? Like we said, change is hard, a lack of digital literacy, and then the resistance to that change. So those are making progress. However, they typically have a clear digital strategy. They have strong leadership commitment. So it starts at the top. And then the organizational culture embraces the change and innovation. They're okay to make mistakes. They're okay to do some type of R&D to make sure they get things right. And they invest in upskilling their workforce, and they want a culture of experimentation. A lot of these companies that fail at this, they're so focused on getting things right. They're so focused on being perfect, so focused on just getting it out to market that they forget to plan first, right? They forget to get some buy-in. They forget to get the people from the ground. How does it work? How can we implement this? They don't get their perspectives. They want everything, all the decisions made in the silo. It doesn't work that way. Everyone has to be involved in that because that's what a culture is, right? It's about the people. And if you do not include all the people and you do it in that silo environment, thinking your leadership knows everything, you will fail.
Yeah, you're absolutely right with what you say there, and leaders aren't the smartest people in the room. I mean, were we ever, Jevon? I don't think so, right?
Nope,
We
nope. Nor do we want to be. Right? Steve Jobs said that you want to hire people smarter than you are, and I wholeheartedly agree.
I wholeheartedly agree, but there are leaders out there that don't think that way still. And maybe they are the laggers that are out there. You talk about that, that's legacy leadership. For me, that's 20th century thinking trying to be applied to the 21st century. And we just need to think quite
Right.
differently. Um, the other point that you mentioned, which I thought I'd bring out, which was a great point, was about this search for perfection, which is again another 20th century trait, if you like. And I think I'm right in saying it's Jessica Tan, who is the COO of Ping An, the big financial services company, Chinese financial services. They said, look, a 70% solution can kill us. So we don't want to have perfection. Let's just get a solution out there and build it as we go, because it's about first mover, it's about speed, and it's about you don't need to be perfect anymore. But some leaders find that hard, I
Absolutely.
think, to compromise behind. Why do you think that is?
Like you said, that 20th century thinking. They're so used to being that company, that person, and they want that responsibility. And it's really, to me, that's about ego. So if you look at the top companies today, they are fine with releasing the minimal viable product, right? Apple does it all the time. They know that they can make the iPhone better. So what do? They release a new version every year with some new technology, right? And every company does that. You can push software updates now over the airwaves. That's showing you that it was never perfect, and nor did they expect it to be. So they, behind the scenes, after they release it, they continue to refine the product. And if you lose that experimental thinking and way of culture, then you're bound to end up where a lot of these companies go, in the graveyard, because they keep those same leaders. That's why diverse thinking, diverse people, diverse perspectives is so important, Jeremy. And that's where a lot of these companies are really lacking. It starts there. It starts with the people, like we've been saying. And if they have everyone looking like them, thinking like them, that group think, it's not going to work.
Right, I'm going to put you on the spot now because you sound just the person for the job for me to build this new leader for a digital era, if you like, from the ground up. So I'm going to put you on the spot. So I'm challenging you with building this DNA, if you like to call it, the qualities that a leader for this era should exhibit in both digital terms and human terms. What does that look like?
Oh, I like this one, Jeremy. All right. So if I had to build someone, this is awesome. I like this. All right. So I'm building someone. I'm going to build a digital leader who has technical acumen. They don't have to be the best at it, but they need to understand it. But strong human qualities, right? On the tech side, they have to be knowledgeable, or at least willing to find out about the current and emerging technology so it can be applied. And then I want them to do data-driven decision making. I don't want it to be based on emotion all the time. I do want them to have hunches, though, right? I do want them to lean in because we said we are not afraid of making mistakes, right? So I want them to have that, have the wherewithal to say, you know what? I know we have all this data over here. Let's try this. So they have to have that. In human terms, they should exhibit the empathy, effective communication, adaptability, and a collaborative mindset, understanding that they are not the buck where it stops, right? They need to know that it takes a team to make the right decisions, right? And they need to be able to listen to the other people who are saying, no, this is not a good idea. But when they listen to that, they need to be open to ask, then what's the solution? Right? We know what the problem is. You don't agree, so what's the solution? And that to me would be a perfect leader, right? This blend of technical know-how and emotional intelligence, because it's crucial in leading today.
Yeah, well said, and a great kind of short list of what's needed. And I really like the point actually around leaning into hunches and perhaps then validating that in a different way with data, trying to find a way of validating hunches as well as embracing the fact that we still have gut feel and that we still have experience to draw
Right.
on, but we can get much better actually at validating or qualifying those hunches these days, which is a great point. And then to
Absolutely.
be able to communicate, collaborate as a team to do it, and listen to everybody having a voice, I feel is a great part of that DNA. So that was excellent. So I did choose the right person
Thank you.
to build that DNA. Thank you very much indeed. And from your experience, because
Yeah, I
I know that
appreciate that.
you interview a lot of leaders, Jevon. You work with so many different organizations, and maybe you don't need to name names, but what examples can you share of perhaps organizations out there or leaders that you've come across who are leading the way with this new DNA, if you like? And what are the benefits that they're realizing through doing so?
Yeah, I'm going to go with some companies that we all know. And one of them is Microsoft, right? Under Satya Nadella's leadership, they've successfully transitioned to a cloud-centric business model while also fostering a culture of learning and innovation. And then Adobe would be another company, right? We all know Adobe. They used to have these packages that they deliver. You used to buy them at Best Buy and all that stuff. But now they switched over to a subscription-based model. So you can just pick what you want, or you can pick all their products. Now, these organizations have benefited from agility, right? Improve customer experiences, and then now they have stronger market positions. Microsoft. We remember years ago when Apple was trying to get into the government and all that other stuff. We were like, oh, Microsoft is in trouble. But now we still see them as one of the most valued companies today, and they still have the most market share today because they were able to transform and transition.
So what does it take for a now, what does it take for an organization, perhaps, with Adobe and Microsoft being both technology companies, what does it take
Mhm.
for maybe legacy organizations and, traditional industries to do the same?
Yeah. Again, I think it takes diverse thinking, right? If you're a legacy organization, you cannot go with just the old guard. You have to be willing to get outside help, get some people who are on the forefront, understand that you do not know everything, nor should you try to get to know everything. You don't have to learn it all. Bring in people who already know, who specialize in that stuff, and let them work. Get some ideas from them. Watch what your competitors are doing. See how they're innovating. See what the market is doing. How has the appetite changed? Listen to your customers. Run some surveys. Get some information there. Amazon has a program called Mechanical Turk that you can actually let them research for you. So there's so many different ways that we as legacy organizations can go ahead and learn that and ramp up really, really quickly.
Yeah, I like that. Don't go with the old guard. I think that's a great point. It's like we should get braver, shouldn't we? At saying, I know what I don't know. I'm very
Yes.
comfortable in admitting what I don't know. So let's get some people in at whatever level who do know it, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's key, Jeremy. Like whatever level, we don't look at the titles as the person who knows everything, right? So like we said, hire people who are smarter than you are in whatever you need, and then ask them what else they need, what resources, what other people would they need to support their efforts, and that's going to be key.
That's right. And that goes back to your point before about listening, really listening,
Absolutely.
opening your ears to that as well. So I'm sure many of those tuning in, Jevon, will be nodding their heads furiously about what you're saying here and the DNA that you've built about this leader for the digital era. So what might be your 4 to 5 tips for those tuning in to help them actually get to action and accelerate the progress that you're calling for?
Absolutely. I think we have alluded to this. My first one is building a diverse and inclusive team that brings different perspectives and ideas. That's number one on my list. We have to have that diverse thinking, diverse perspective, diverse experiences to have diverse outcomes. The second one would be cultivating a digital mindset across the organization. What does that mean? We see remote work. We see a lot of companies looking to bring people back, and that's fine. But we also have to realize that we can touch everyone these days. We can get information from anywhere these days. We need to embrace that, right? Like we said, it's not about having the old guard. It's not about the leadership knowing everything. Now it's about parsing through all these data points that we have, finding out what's relevant for us, and going ahead and having fun and trying it out. See what comes of it, right? Digital mindset is all about that quick thinking, agile processes, and etc. And then we want to invest in continuous learning, upskilling yourself and your team. It's very important. Business moves at the speed of business. So we have to make sure that we're investing in ourselves and our team. Ask them, create a development plan for them, and also be willing to shift. Like if you check in with them quarterly, ask them, does that still align with where they want to go or where they should go? And be willing to shift, be flexible with that plan and that upskilling. Fostering a culture of innovation and experimentation. We have threaded this and weaved this into this conversation this whole time. Innovation, experimentation. If you really want to elevate your company, your business, and your impact, you have to be willing to experiment. You cannot go with what worked previously because it's not going to work. If it's working right now, it won't work tomorrow. I'm telling you, I promise you that. So you have to be willing to experiment and innovate. And then the last point I would say is focus on customer centricity, and use that data-driven decision making. Now, customers, we have to make sure if you're a leader, you don't just have one customer base. It's not just the external customer base. You also have those internal customers, which are your employees, your staff, your peers, right? So we have to make sure we're serving everyone above the level, not at the level, above the level. And then use that data to make sure that we're not just doing things on a whim, but we have an understanding of why we're doing things. And then we can message that and convey that. Because what's going to happen with those customers, they need to know that and understand the value. And that's the key.
A great 5 points to summarize with, and I'm just gonna reiterate those for those tuning in. So that diversity and inclusivity of thinking, of perspectives, of how we do things, embracing new ways of doing things, really important. And that's part of what you call the digital mindset, which I really
Yes.
liked. Being more empowered at all levels as well. We're talking about here adopting digital ways of working like agile, and leading very nicely to the third point, which is continual learning, because there's new skills that we need to learn to be able to do that,
Mhm.
particularly if we're unleashing the power of the many and asking more people to innovate or experiment at their level as much as at organizational level, which was really your fourth point, which really talks to me. And the fifth point, I feel, wraps around the whole thing, that customer centricity, your external customer, your internal customer, and leading that, as you say, above the level. That's a great piece of advice from that. And talking about advice and this sort of leadership know-how, before we close, Jevon, I know that you have a podcast. I've been very honored to be a guest on that podcast. For those tuning into mine, tell us what it's called, what it's about, and what you hope to achieve with your podcast.
Yeah, firstly, man, this has been an amazing conversation, Jeremy. I really appreciate this. This was fun, and it was fun having you on Design Your Life and Business, the Leaders Podcast. And that podcast is really enough, no fluff way for me to disseminate information to the masses. When I started that podcast, speaking of diversity, I wanted to get the insights of those who have not been heard as much as those gurus out there, because we are saying just as important, if not more important things, because we're at the forefront and we're still doing these things day in and day out. So that was really the reason why I started that podcast. And then you can find it if you want, go to the leaderspodcast.com or just search Design Your Life and Business on any place that you watch or listen to your podcast.
Excellent. And I can, as a podcast host myself, this is what I learn from, ladies and gentlemen, and I can highly recommend theleaderspod.com, which is Jevon's podcast. I get so much out of it myself. I'd urge you to go and tune in there as well. Jevon, thanks so much for joining me. Outside of your podcast, how do people find out more about your business, your work, and how do they keep the conversation going with you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me. LinkedIn is my number one platform. Just search Jevon Wooden with a light bulb next to it. You'll see it. Or you can go to brightmindcg.com and you can connect with me there as well and find out more about what we have going on.
Jevon Wooden, thank you very much for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeremy. Keep ascending.
Thanks for tuning in to the Rethink Leadership podcast with me, Jeremy Blain. Please like, comment, and support us on your favorite platform, and subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch as well as listen to each episode.